Welcome back, everyone. I'm Jason and you're watching Jason Jensen Trains. In today's video, we're going to be building the newest kit called Full Moon Tavern. It is kit number 7 and it's currently available on my website at jasonjensentrains.com. Now, if you are a Patreon member, you receive a discount, and the discount code can be found on my Patreon page at patreon.com/Jason Jensen Trains. All right, this is a very fun build, and of course, we will be finding a home for it when we're done somewhere on the layout. All right, well, let's get to it. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is cut out the walls, and then we'll add 1/8 inch bracing to the back of them according to the instructions, and that wood is marked with red on the end. Okay, so all of the walls are braced, and let me go over them quick with you. So you have this long wall, and I went all the way to the edge on the sides and then one down the center. Then with these two, all the way to the edge on the tall side. And then come in 1/8 with these. This one here, come in 1/8 on both sides. With this one, go all the way to the edge. This one, come in 1/8. Then we have these two. And there's just one on each, and it goes all the way to the edge on the short side. This one, long and thin, and make sure you come in 1/8 of an inch from the short side. And then this one here, just put it to the edge. And it's all in a diagram in the instructions. Now we need to stain everything, and I'm using black, but I'm not going to shake the bottle, and that's going to make it a little bit lighter. Now I'm also going to stain all the strip wood that comes in the kit, and we'll just quick dunk this. Make sure you spread it out so that the wood doesn't stick together. Okay. By the way, this stain is from Best, and the web address is right there. Okay, I'm going to go quick wash my hands so that the black doesn't stain. And then we'll come back and start to add some color to this. For our color, we're going to be mixing 2 different paints. We're going to be using Thicket and Deep Midnight Blue, both from Americana, and we're doing 50-50. Like always, I'm sure I mixed too much paint. Now you could sponge on the color if you wanted to. I am just lightly dragging the brush over the individual boards. So I just took a sponge and sponged the blue color onto all of our strip wood. Now I'll spray a primer on all of our doors and windows and then sponge the blue onto all of these parts. You know, while we still have paint that's not dried up, let's paint the inside of these windows with the dark blue color. Don't get the paint too thick because you want those windows to pop in there. Yeah, definitely make sure you don't have any extra paint in the corners. Otherwise your windows won't fit in there. Okay, next we're going to cut out the front. That gets glued onto here. And we're going to use a brand new blade. Don't worry if the windows aren't exact because they get a frame put around each one. If there's any little overhang, we can trim it once it's glued on there. Now let's get our little windows glued in place. The windows are thin, so you want to be very careful. They're pretty fragile. Okay, now we'll get some acetate glued on the back side of these windows, and then we'll get them glued in place. And I almost forgot, if you're afraid of any white showing, go over the edge with a marker. I'm using a dark gray. You can actually do this before you glue the paper on. Just go over the edges quick. Okay, no white edges. Okay, for the windows, I am cutting thin rectangles the exact size of the window. I then just tap it with a little bit of super glue. Blotting it with my finger so it's not too thick. And then simply lay it on top of the piece of acetate. And you may have to trim it a little bit. Now, if you don't mind your windows being set back in a little further, you can cut bigger pieces of acetate that are on the whole back side of this. You could cut a whole strip that goes across the back if you wanted to, and just glue your windows in there. I wanted mine to be sort of in the middle. They fit really tight in there. It's nice. And then we'll just put a dab of Elmer's glue in there. Just put a small dab in the corner just to hold them. Yeah, I think in hindsight, the easiest way would be to glue those in place, then just take a strip of acetate and glue it across the back. Okay, we'll let that dry. And then there's frames, window frames that go around the fronts. The tabs that hold these in place are really thin, so it's easier to see them from the back side than the front. And you really don't need a lot of glue, just a little bit to hold it in place. Okay, I'll finish up this, and then we'll get our other windows glued in place too. Okay, I've got the window glued in here. Now there's a wall with a square in it. That gets a vent put in it. I made that vent the same size as the hole, and I think I'm going to make it slightly bigger. I just don't like the way that it just sits in there. Now, let's see. This one gets a vent, but it's two parts. There's a fan blade that gets glued in there first. Now we have a frame, and again, I made it the same size. I don't know why I did that. I'm going to make these fan covers slightly bigger so that it's easier to glue on. Let's build our doors, and then we can start to assemble our walls. So the front door is this one, and the back door is this bottom one. The doors are made up of two parts, and I am painting the back part baby blue. Again, Americana. I wanted to show you quick how I glue the doors in. So I set it in place from the front. Then I flip it over and glue it. Now I'm putting glue on the door frame, and I'm just kind of spreading the glue out so it's good and thin. And then we'll just set this in place. Okay, I think that baby blue really matches the lettering on the front. Now, very important, you want to make sure that your wall is perfectly flat. Now, I used glue, Elmer's glue, so it tends to want to curl a little bit, so you got to kind of bend it and straighten it. But if you use double-sided tape and put that on, that would work the best. First, let's start with the back wall. And using the lines on our grid, let's go ahead and get our corner trim glued on this. Now, I want to point out that I left room for the corner trim on this side and on this side, and obviously on the back two corners. Now, you can glue the corner trim on the walls before you assemble the walls while they're laying flat. So like, for example, this one here, we would glue the corner trim on first, then assemble our walls. Okay, so the main structure is finished. Now let's work on the pop-out structure that goes right here. And on this one, let's glue on our trim first. Might make things a little bit easier. Now make sure you have the right walls. Let's see, so this one goes on the front. That goes here. And we have this one. Okay, so we're taking these two and not doing that. That goes. Okay, those go together. These three make up a small structure that goes on the other side. All the parts are numbered in the instructions, so you won't get confused. I will write the instructions right after I'm done building this. So I always have to put together the structure without instructions. which sometimes can be a challenge. Don't know why I put glue on that side. Okay. Again, use the grid to make sure it's nice and square. Okay, we're going to add trim to the right side of the door. We can let that dry, and let's move on to adding trim on both sides of this wall. Okay, we'll let that dry, then we'll come back to this one. Now we're going to glue on this thin wall. And that goes right there. Now, take your time when doing this. Set your wall section up on the grid and then hold it there, or even take your square, your block, let me back up. Okay, we're making sure that it's on a line. Then we put this up against it, flat. Then take your main structure. Okay, we'll let that sit and give it a little bit of time to dry. And then let's assemble this. Okay, now let's give this a second to dry. You know, you never want to assume that a structure is really simple to put together, because then you just get in a hurry, and that's when accidents start to happen. So even though this is a small structure and it is fairly easy to assemble, really take your time and make sure that everything is nice and square and fits properly. You always want to dry fit stuff together before you actually glue it. Now this little structure gets put on the side, and you can glue it anywhere on the side. I suppose you could, even if you wanted to, glue it on the back. I think it looks best on the side, and I think we'll center it. Now let's move on to painting our concrete. First, we have to cut these shapes out of the center. So this one, little L shape, goes right there. And then this one goes on the side in the center for that little pop out. Just like that. Okay, so first we'll get these glued together. You may have to file them a little bit. Doesn't take much. It's quick. This is one of my favorite tools. Definitely a tool I use the most. I use it a lot. I'll put a link in the description below if you're interested in getting one. Okay, we'll let that dry, and then we'll paint it a concrete color. Now let's paint our concrete. We're going to start with chalk paint called Cocoon. Let's mix in a little bit of slate gray. And we don't have to paint the whole thing. A lot of it gets covered. We just want the edges. I think I'm actually going to do a little bit of redesigning for you. I'd like a little bit of a concrete pad right in front of that door. So I'll just simply I'll laser cut that. So in the kit that you get, you'll be able to cut that piece out and glue that right in front of the door. I'll take a scrap piece and cut one so that I don't damage the structure by trying to cut that out. Okay, our little concrete pad is in the front. Now you should have enough wood left over of the bracing to put a piece right there in the center. Let's get our roof cards cut out and get those glued on. First we'll need to paint the underside of them the blue color. Okay, again, we'll paint the underside and the edge of these the blue color, and then maybe before we glue them on, we'll glue on the black tar paper. Okay, so I glued on all my black construction paper, and I cut the strips 3/8. I believe it's 3/8. Yes, 3/8 wide, and glued them all on. So now we'll just simply glue these on to the structure. I almost forgot. The next step is to add our trim underneath the roof all the way around. Okay, we'll do that next. That'll take a little bit of time, but not hard, just time consuming. We are using the wood that's marked with green on the end. Now I've already stained mine and I already sponged on the blue color. So all I have to do is cut all the pieces and go all the way around underneath the roof overhang. Okay, the trim is all glued on underneath the overhang. Really finishes it off. Now we're going to do some weathering to the rooftops. First, we're taking some sandpaper. This is, I don't know, I believe it's maybe 150 grit. Notice I'm going one direction, and then heavier towards the bottom. Okay, then we'll do some dry brushing. Use light gray. Here are the supports for the rooftop sign. We'll cut these out and then spray a gray primer on both sides, and then I'll show you how to glue it together. Okay, next we're going to glue these all together. As you can see, they have a gray primer on them. I just use a rattle can. Now there's no front or back to these. So I just put super glue along one edge of it. Then the angled side gets glued on that edge. You can make sure that it's square, and then you can use this Insta set. I think I got this at Hobby Lobby. And then you can just quick spray it, and it sets up instantly. Now we're going to put glue on the front of these. And we're going to take this piece, and we'll lay that down first. Okay, here's the sign that gets glued on the front of that. Now, we want to spray a gray primer on the back side of it. So this is the back side. This is the front. And you'll see in the instructions, you'll get a sign that we're going to glue on the front of this. So again, we're going to spray a gray primer on the back of it. Okay, now we're just going to add a little bit of rust to the frame and the back of that sign. So I'm using burnt sienna, very small sponge, and we're going to focus mostly on the top. Now we could even take my favorite, bittersweet chocolate, now we need to cut out the sign and glue it to the other side of this. So here is the sign that we need to cut out. Go very slow, use a brand new blade. Maybe first do your straight lines with the ruler. Oh, and you'll see there's little signs too that will cut out and weather and glue onto the building. So again, let's do our straight lines first. Take your time, go really slow. There is no need to hurry. If there are little fuzzy pieces on it, just lay it down and very carefully clean them up. So now we'll smear some glue on this. But don't worry if there's a little bit of white around the edges. We can go back in and touch that up with paint. Now you'll see, I don't know if you can see, but there's a little bit of white showing. And we can simply take a marker, a dark brown marker, and go over our edges. Now you want to be kind of quick. You don't want to just slowly drag it because the marker will bleed into the paper. Okay, now you want to make sure that it's completely flat. So you may have to bend it if it's warped a little bit. Now let's glue the support to it. And this side of it gets glued in the center of the circle, center of the moon. We could just use some super glue. So I lined up the bottom. Now, I suggest doing a test fit of where you want this, and then let's mark it with a pencil. I'm going to put mine off center and put it over to the right a little bit. I'll show you. Okay, next we'll quick cut out our little signs and get those glued on. Then we have a couple detail parts to paint. for this. Take our brown marker and go over the edges. Now if you want these to look kind of rusty, you can hold your marker on the corner for a little bit and let the ink bleed into the paper. Okay, our signs are all on. I put a little meter there. Oh, and I have to put, there's a circle that goes on there that is white. I'll put that in the center. But you can see the signs. We are almost done. And you can see I did a little bit of weathering with some rust. We have a smokestack. Let's break that off the support. We have a smokestack, and then we have trash cans and a black trash bag. And again, we have to break that off the support. This one will cut. Okay, we'll hit those quick with a gray primer and then get some paint on them and get them glued on. Okay, this model is finished. I'll take the camera off and give you a little closer look. Okay, now we need to find a home for it on the layout. There's a couple spots that I'm thinking of, but I'm undecided. So we'll place it on the layout, but it may not stay there. We'll see. One last thing before we take this over to the layout to help create a little bit of storytelling. So the main bar or tavern was built, say, in, let's just say, the 30s. And in the 50s, at some time, they put this sign up on the rooftop. So I want to sort of weather the front here to make it look like this is all sort of chipping off, maybe fading, and they thought it would be a good idea to put the sign up on the top. So I'm just taking black, flat black, I think that's probably good. Maybe I'll do just a little bit more. Still want it to be readable, but you do have the sign up on the rooftop, so okay, that's good. All right, now we're finished. Well, as you can see, it found its new home. Now, originally I was thinking of putting it on the other side of the layout, up on the hill. I set it up there, but having it mixed in with other structures that were 2 and 3 stories tall, it just looked too small and it looked out of place. So I decided on this area right here. And I'm excited about this because you can only see the front of it when you're standing on this side. But when you're viewing the layout from the other side, you can only see the back of it, which I love. I love that you can only see the front of certain structures when standing at different angles. I think it really just adds to the realism of it, and it helps to tell a little bit of a story. So, well, I hope you enjoyed today's video. I loved building this structure. And again, this is currently available on my website at jasonjensentrains.com. Now, if you are a Patreon, one of these members right here, you will receive a discount. And the discount code will be on my Patreon page. All right, well, thank you all so much for watching. Truly appreciate it. Until next time, stay motivated and happy modeling, everyone.